Hi, Jay. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good, thank you. So, welcome to your first reading, one of two. How very exciting. Have you ever
Mm,
had a human design reading of any kind before?
not yet. Mm, don't in the details, but I know the few things.
And you've had astrology done before?
No.
No? Okay, cool. So, just to give you a little bit of, we need to check a couple of details, just make sure that everything is good to go. But just to give you a little bit of an idea of how the session is going to go, I'm going to explain a bit about the chart to you to start with, and then I'm going to roll into the reading. And then towards the end, if you have any questions, like if you want to clarify, by all means, just ask as we're going through, just to clarify something I've said. But if you have any questions within this, if you can leave them towards the end, that way I can get all this information out because it is a lot of information. Um,
Okay.
and I don't want you to miss any of it.
Yes.
So I have sent you a copy of your chart. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I just want to confirm with you that your birthday is the 11th of January, 1997, born 5 a.m. in Gujarat. And you,
Yes.
awesome. Excellent. That means that we can keep going. So you're having a look at this little chart here, and this chart is a map of how your vehicle was influenced by what was happening in the star field at the time of your birth. And so you've heard in astrology, we kind of divide the sky into 12 parts.
Yes.
What we actually do in human design is we divide the sky into 64 parts, and those are the 64 gates of the I Ching. So the I Ching is a Chinese system of mapping the sky. Then what happens is the 12 planets that you're probably already familiar with regards to with regards to astrology, they will pass through those gates. And so at the time of your birth, the map of those 12 planets passing through whichever gate is actually how we come about, how this chart comes about. So what that does is it basically maps the stardust that's going to pass through our solar system and through your body, both at the time of your birth and 88 degrees before the time of your birth, which is roughly 3 months before. So when you look at your chart, you see we have like nine centers there, right? So there's lots of little triangles and squares. Yeah.
Yes.
And you'll see that um, if you look to something like the Kabbalah or the chakra system, it kind of looks a little bit like the tree of life from the Kabbalah, or a little bit like the seven-centered chakra system that you'd find in the yogic Vedic tradition. Yeah. But this is the new version of that system in a sense. And so what we've done is we've brought together the I Ching, the Kabbalah, the chakra system, and a bit of genetic coding and the I Ching, all wrapped up into one to give you this chart.
Mm,
There is no good charts or bad charts. I think it's really worth saying at this point. Everybody's design is perfect. And to me, I always describe it as your karmic handshake to do your work in this life. You get this vehicle. Yeah.
okay.
And so, what we're going to look at today is the vehicle that you're in and how it is circuited and how it's working, both in the conscious and the unconscious of the body.
Okay.
So, does that sound you're up with me there?
Oh yeah, I'm with you.
Cool. So if you look at your chart, you've got white centers, colored centers. Connecting colored centers, you've got what we call a channel. And the
Mhm.
white centers, you might have little bits of gates hanging off them. And in some of those white centers, you don't have anything hanging off them because you have two completely open centers. So when we look at the color in your chart, so if we look at the top of your chart, you can see a white triangle at the top and then pointing downwards a green triangle, and then going further down a brown triangle and then a yellow one and then a red one. That is what is defined in your chart, in your centers. So you have a defined mind, a defined throat, a defined, that yellow diamond, we call that the self center. And then the next one down is the defined sacral, which is a very important in your design because it's how you make decisions, but it's also what's running your system and really defines your strategy in this life as well for how you're going to move through the world. If you look, so in your chart, you have a column on the left and a column on the right, yeah?
Yeah.
And so the column on the left is all in red, and here it's listed as design, yeah? And we also would call this the unconscious, that which you're not aware of, that's just automatically running.
Mm-hmm.
And it's often referred to as pink. I always call it red because to me it looks red. We often call this the pink side of the chart.
Yeah.
And you're going to see that the pinkness also marries with gates or channels in your chart that are also pink. So if you go to that very top triangle,
Yeah.
you'll
Yes.
see there's like a little pink 64 hanging there.
Yes.
So that's an unconscious gate hanging in an undefined center.
Okay.
And what it means when that center is undefined or white like that, or open like a couple of your other centers, is that you're not running this all the time. It really depends on who you come into contact with, whether the center lights up or not. And in some cases it will, in some cases it won't. In a crowd of people, it's going to light up because someone's going to have a definition there, or a gate that will connect in with one of your gates and help light you up together. So we would call these white areas playful areas. We may also call them areas where you avoid stuff, or where you get caught in something that's not so important for your design. They can also be where you have gates hanging like this, they can also be wisdom gates. So when you learn to really run this design well, and those white centers are just playful areas for you that you don't get too caught up in, you will find that these gates that are hanging off them become wisdom that you can share with others. So if we come over to the other side, we see that there's a black side of definition called the personality.
Yeah.
Or what we refer to as your conscious. So this is stuff that you're going to be aware of. That red stuff is stuff that you're not necessarily going to be aware of. And so what we get within this chart is kind of like this wonderful cheat code to learning about yourself, where there's some stuff you're going to recognize and it's going to reaffirm you knowing who you are. And there's other stuff where you're kind of going to go, like, and you're going to be able to start observing that stuff just naturally playing out in you.
Okay.
So also with these two strips of numbers and information here, you'll also see little hieroglyphs. So at the very top on each side, you see a circle with a dot.
Yes.
So that's the sun. So in the astrological term of planets, let's call the sun a planet, but it's not. But the sun on your date of birth passed consciously through the 61st gate, and it passed through the line number 1 of that gate as well in that conscious sun. 3 months before, it passed through the 32nd gate in the line 3. And so that's in the unconscious. Sometimes we'd also say that this is playing out more in the body as well, whereas the other side might be playing out more in the personality. Yeah. And so if we go down, we see the same thing again. We see the earth is that circle with a cross.
Yep. 62.1.
62.1, exactly. And that's so your earth, conscious earth, was in gate 62, line 1. Yeah.
Okay.
And that was at your time of birth. And if we go to the other side, 42.3, 3 months before you were born. Now, we also say that this pink side is your inherited stuff. So we can trace the chart, we can trace some of these details back potentially 4 generations so far. Keeping in mind that human design is new, has only been around for, 30 plus years. And so we're still developing a lot of stuff here, but we can tell you a lot about yourself and a bit about your inheritance as well. Up with me so far?
Yes.
Great. Let's go over gates and channels. So just to clarify, if something is black on the chart, like that 61 line one, if we go over to the top crown center again, that top triangle, you can see that there's a hanging gate there. Yeah.
Yes.
And it doesn't connect down to the head, down to the green arrow or the green diamond.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But green triangle. But we have that hanging gate, and you'll see there's red and black there. Do you see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the black is the 61 line one, that's your conscious sun. Yeah.
Yes.
And the black side of things. And on the pink side of things, if we look down, we see down at the bottom there, just jump up one from the bottom.
Yep.
61 line 5 is in your unconscious Neptune. So we see an echo of that 61st gate in another
Okay.
part. Yeah. And that means we get, in this case, a red and a black line in that gate. Yeah. And you might want to bring more attention to those areas in your life, even in the undefined centers, they can be very relevant. And in your case, it actually really is, because that 61st gate being in your conscious sun, it very much changes how you receive what you're doing here on the planet, because you almost are going to want to plug into people to feel your purpose, your design fully in a way, because that 61st gate is very influential in your chart, but it is undefined in yours. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
So it makes you a little bit interesting. It's like being in a room where there's doors, but it's so dark you don't know how to open the door. And so someone's going to open that door for you. And that way the light's going to come in and you're going to see what you're doing here, essentially. And that's going to relate to your life theme as well.
Okay. So that's why it's a black and red.
The black and red is because it's on both sides of the chart. So we have a 61st line 1 over in the sun side, and we have a 61 line 5 over, like down the bottom in the Neptune. So
Yeah.
it's black and red because you have the two activations within the chart, but they're waiting for someone to turn the light on. Yeah. Yeah. And so when someone turns the light on, that top center will light up and you'll kind of have a moment of, So
It's the same as like if you are confused something, and like if you get an idea from someone, it's like this.
it is like this. That's right. It is, but it's electromagnetic, so it's almost without having to say anything sometimes,
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you're just in someone's presence and you are going to feel it.
Got it.
So I also like to talk about the chart. When we're using the chart, there's a way that we move through the world and there's an intuition. And so that's going to come through in your reading as well. We're going to talk about what it is to be sacral and a generator and all that sort of stuff as we go through. But I want to just make sure you understand what a channel is. So we've got all these hanging gates. That's great. When one gate hanging off one center connects with another gate hanging off another center, it creates a channel. Yeah. And so if you come down into that green triangle and you move down that 17, you see the 17th gate there and it's red, so it's in the unconscious side. And then it comes into the black, into the 62. That's right. And it lights up that next center. So those two centers are connected through two gates and they give you a channel.
Mm-hmm.
The 1762. Yeah. Which is the channel of the organizer. So we're going to come into that. And then this is a split definition. So you'll see if you come down from the throat, you see the throat is not actually connecting to that yellow diamond, the self center.
Yes, 43 to 23.
No. If you come down into the throat, so that's the brown square.
Yes.
You see the yellow diamond below it.
Oh, yeah.
And you see how we've got a hanging 13 there. So there's a
black.
Yep, but it's not connected to anything. There's no 33.
Yeah, it's 33. It's not connected with that.
Exactly. So this is a split definition for you. And there will be a desire to partner and to want to come together with someone. There'll be an understanding of compromise because you're going to want to bridge the two parts of your design. There's also an ability to hold almost like two perspectives on something within your design. Does that make sense? Like you can kind of see it from 2 points of view or 2 angles?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually because you have 2 parts to your chart. And whilst you'll be looking for a bridge, you are reaching for that 33, you are looking for the, for that gate of retreat. You can actually run your design separately and just be aware that you have 2 parts of it, 2 different perspectives, 2 things running. Yeah. So it's like the mind takes in stuff and perceives it over here. And then down the bottom, the gut is responding to things that are for you, for your self-definition, things that light you up as an individual. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's move into some of these channels and talk about how they work. But keep in mind this idea that when you're a split definition, and you've got a very subtle split there, just before I move on from that, is that when you can get caught in like contrast, which in human design sometimes we call the not self, but I prefer to say it's contrast. So when you get caught in kind of not happy feelings or not feeling comfortable, you might start turning on yourself and being like, oh, what have I done wrong? What's wrong with me? And that's actually part of your mechanism, right? It's a shadow in your mechanism that you might sort of turn on yourself and kind of go, things are not working out. I must have done something wrong. Is that familiar?
Yeah.
Yeah. Also with you're a 1-3 profile. And so with that 1-3 design, because that third line is really here to experience life, and that can be, trial by fire sometimes, you can turn on yourself because of that third line experimental, bonds made and broken. It's very much about connecting with people and disconnecting with them. And that bonds made and broken can simply be, putting the phone down at the end of the night and going, I'll talk to you later sometime.
Yeah.
It could be going to bed in separate rooms. It could be, I don't actually feel like talking to that person for a while. And bonds can be broken forever. That's true. But bonds are often broken and made again. So it's worth remembering that sometimes time does heal all wounds, and sometimes it is a time to be together, a time to be apart, and a time to come together again. And with a split definition and a desire to bond, to be with people, that's something to remember, that there is going to be a breaking of bonds at times, and to learn to flow with that. Yeah?
Yes.
And to not turn on yourself. There is nothing wrong with you, right? There is a perfection in all of us. And your chart, like I said before, there is no perfect or imperfect chart, or there is no better or worse chart. They're all perfect. They're all correct for the person that receives them. So I want to come through your definition. You have this defined mind, and this wonderful defined mind has this wonderful wonderful channel hanging off it, the 1762. When you have a defined mind, meditation can seem difficult because people get attached to this idea of like, in order to meditate, I must quiet my mind. This is incorrect for someone with a defined mind. I can tell you that from personal experience. My mind's always doing fun stuff, and I just let it do its thing. Oh, yeah. It's popping thoughts. It's, up to stuff over there. And I just observe it, actually. Because I have no intention of quietening something that is defined, that is always wanting to be active. Because that's what definition is within a chart. Something which is always on. And your mind is always on. So learning to breathe out, learning to like stay present while the mind does its thing, and continuing to bring yourself back to just not getting caught in the thoughts, right? Not arguing with them, not trying to stop them, which for a defined mind is torture in meditation. Oh, I've got to stop thinking, I've got to stop thinking, I've got to stop thinking. You cannot solve the mind with the mind. And that's something to remember also within having the defined mind, is that, you have a logic channel here, and, that first line 17 is unconscious. So it's always kind of popping. It's always going to be doing its thing. And then you may not even always be aware of that. And then it meets that 62, which is conscious, which you're aware of. And it's looking to be very logical in the way that it thinks, and it's always thinking collectively. So this is a collective circuit, which means it's kind of got a big picture view, right? It's looking at everyone and everything. Having a clever mind can be a real trap. You cannot solve life with your mind. You cannot make decisions with your mind. Your mind is never an authority. It might give you a perspective. It might be a great way to explain something to someone. It might be a great way to translate. And what this channel is very good at is it can see patterns very clearly. Like you're very skilled at seeing the pattern and potentially in behavior, the pattern in the way something is working, the pattern in the way, and it can be for the collective. It can be very socially minded, the pattern of how society is working even. And then you can explain that pattern to people because you have this channel connecting the mind to the throat. And so you get to express these patterns out into the world. And that's a wonderful thing. But it cannot make decisions for you. That's really important to note. And whilst this mind is constantly busy organizing the details of life, it's like creating its own little filing system. You know, this goes over here and this goes over here and this makes sense here because there's this pattern in the world. It's important for you to like find release through this channel as well. But not every perspective, not every idea is for you. And so you're going to find yourself saying, oh, I just don't really understand you. And that's actually your mind going, this doesn't really fit with my perception of the world. It doesn't fit with the patterns that I've perceived. And I would say to you that allowing yourself to receive ideas is great, but because there is a sacral authority, which I'm going to go over more later, that you're going to want to run it through your whole design before you make a decision whether that's something to adopt or not. So being careful not to take on other people's ideas just because you think you should, and more listening out for this, I just don't understand what you're saying. And then also checking it. Did my sacral jump at this? Was my sacral even into this person in the first place? You know?
Okay.
So remember that this can be a very argumentative channel. So watch out for arguing just because you can. Like I said, you're very clever. You can pull apart someone's argument if you want to for the sake of it. But is this energy well spent? And does this really serve anyone? Should be questions that you ask. The 17 is the right eye. Like it's a way of zeroing in on stuff, and you may even find yourself using your right eye for that because of the way you're activating your brain. And then, you know, you can also, this can also help you connect through the throat, even with animals. Like this is one of the 62, that gate 62 is a mammalian linked gate. And it has actually been part of us like training animals and teaching animals how to like sit and stay and do all that sort of stuff. So it's part of our communication that's developed our relationship with animals. So I thought that was quite a cool little note for you as well. You're very good at organizing things logically, and it is a sought after gift. This could include anything, events, projects, spaces, though you may find that you're actually messy at home.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
But you're always filing stuff and organizing stuff for a bigger picture. And it's the way this mind works. It's always looking at the bigger picture, including the patterns. And so, you know, we look forward to your communication of the pattern that you see in life.
Okay.
Oh, I just jumped something there. Just go back a page. So, but then we bridge down. So like I said, you're not connected as you come down. Oh, there is one other thing I wanted to touch on there. So you see how you have that fourth line gate going up towards that top triangle?
63?
going, yeah, it's going up towards that, but it's not connecting. And you see, so there's an unconscious influence here in how your mind works, that you're always going for the little details. And you've got a really good knack for grabbing the details and the itsy bitsy things, which is a really interesting influence on this channel that's looking for patterns, because you're going to see infinitesimal patterns within patterns within patterns as well. So that's quite an interesting color you bring. If we move down and we see this defined self-center, yeah? And I want to point out that it's under the throat, and the throat is the manifestation area, and everybody's trying to manifest their stuff in this life, and you have that defined throat. So that's a lovely thing for you to have access to, but everybody gets to use it one way or another. And you may find people come up to you and start talking all sorts of rubbish at you sometimes, and you're wondering what they're going on about. And sometimes that's just because they're trying to access that throat center and it's not defined.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So when we come down into this yellow diamond in the basically around your heart, this yellow diamond really is about self-love. And you have the channel, the 1034. Can you see that connecting the center below?
Yeah, just a round one.
Yeah, and this is the channel of exploration. So we have an explorer that can see patterns. And we have an explorer that explores with the utmost energy in the world. 34 power meets 10, gate 10 behavior. And we have this person who is really out there exploring according to what they intuit for themselves, what they're drawn towards for themselves. And so there's this explosive energy that comes up from the sacral, and it really jumps up in you towards what is for you.
Okay.
And it's got a real self-love quality for it. It's like your sacral is really responding to loving you. And as you do that, you're going to go through and explore all sorts of different things. And with that other channel, you're going to see the patterns in life. But it is also this quality of self-love. And we see the 25th gate. Do you see that one? If you keep
51.
Yeah, that's reaching for the 51. This is innocence. This is a really beautiful gate. And it really is about the highest exaltation of self-love. It really is compassion on high, unconditional love. And so you are being invited in this life to really love yourself for who you are and to do things that really are for you, that you really want to do, because there's this explosive energy jumping towards it. And with this self-center, this G center, sometimes it's called, because it's connected to all things. The G center is like the Fibonacci code, the spiral in the shell, the spiral in the fern. We see this spiral everywhere in nature. It's like understanding that you are connected to all things. And so when the sacral center is jumping towards things, it's jumping towards its connection. It's connection to nature, it's connection to love, it's connection to this unconditional exaltation of what it is to be here as a human being. We also see conditioning this channel, gate 13, the listener.
Yes, 13 to 33.
13 to 33, but you just have the 13. So it's reaching for that 33. It's looking for that gate of retreat. Just like the 25th gate is sort of hanging out there waiting for the 51, for shock to connect with it, So you may find you bump into shocking people and shocking things at times. I will say when you have this gate 25, really use your sacral response, that like jumping towards someone to find the correct people for yourself. People with the gate 25, they really don't have a tolerance. I would go as far as saying they don't have an ability to deal with people who are not good people, and by that I mean we all have elements of darkness and light within us, but those who are tricky and deceptive and scoundrels and really willing to manipulate, you are going to struggle to really understand that, and it's going to be harsh. It's going to be quite harsh. And so sometimes that gate of shock does come into our lives to slap us upside the head You know, you meet a shocking person who is like that, and it's like, be kind to yourself. Not everyone is for you, and not everyone is for everyone. There's a concept in human design where we talk about fractal, people being in our fractal. Some people are for us, and it's that sacral jumping for those people that's going to tell you, you know, that gut response. We also see the gate 46, and I really wanted to touch on this one for you because it speaks so much to stuff that I know that's already going on in your life. This gate is called serendipity, being in the right place at the right time with the right attitude is going to land you serendipitously in all these wonderful things that are going to be for you. And I know you know this, but there's an extra little tagline here: in the right health. Love it when I get to drop one of those. Looking after your health is really important for you being in the right place at the right time with the right attitude. Being able to run your design well, no matter who you are, whether you have serendipity or not, is about good health. And it's so much easier, and we see an echo later on in your 34 as well. So much easier to run your chart well. That gate 34, your health will affect your mood, and moodiness can be a problem within your chart because it will limit the amount of energy you have. And this energy channel you have here, often also referred to as pure energy, energy higher than tantric energy. It bypasses the need to convert sexual energy into something else. It's a straight plug-in from existence to you to self, right? You are plugged right in there with that sacred energy, and through this channel, there's nothing to convert. It is direct, but your moodiness is going to get in your way. And so serendipity combined with this channel to me is divine, because it's saying be in good health. It's so much easier to be in a good mood when you're in good health, when your feet don't hurt, when you don't have a headache, when you don't have a stomach that's really upset, when your back isn't sore because your life chi is being depleted. And so this sense of you overworking is problematic. And when we come down into that very bottom center that's white, underneath the sacral, underneath the red center, you see that?
Yes.
We see an undefined root. And I'm going to touch on this here, even though I still have stuff to say about 3410. We see an undefined root, and that means you're not designed to sustain consistent pressure. You also have an undefined crown. So these are our two pressure centers, right? This top diamond, triangle, what do I keep calling it, a diamond? This top triangle and this bottom square. And they are the pressure centers. And when they're defined, you can sustain a consistent pressure to some extent, especially as a generator. But you don't have that. And this is also your adrenal health here. And looking after your adrenals is something I've had to do my entire life. And it's something that, because there is what I'd call an adrenal tripwire in your system, it is calling you home to look after your health, to look after yourself. And when you do that, you are going to find serendipitously, you end up in the right place at the right time, in the right health, with the right attitude, with all the power and energy in the world to do what you really want to do, because that energy is going to be jumping up. And so there is also something coming through in your chart about timing. And just take your time. Don't be in such a rush all the time. And because you have this channel of the 3410, you're jumping so quick because there's so much energy in you. But you can be impatient.
Oh, yes. Sometimes it happens like, oh, let's go. But I don't know, it's like right or wrong. Sometimes it happens.
Yeah, and the question becomes, is there energy really for this, or are you just spending energy for the sake of it? You know? And so this channel of exploration is about exploring what is correct for you, you know? And if you explore something that's not correct for you, cool, you get to take a lesson from that, right? Oh, I went down a line, now I feel frustrated. This is a key word for you, right? feeling frustrated means somewhere along the way you made a decision or you have continued to make a decision, because what's right for you in one moment may shift and change, but you have made a decision or have continued to make a decision, and now you're frustrated by that decision because maybe there wasn't energy for it, or maybe there is no longer energy for it. Does that make
Oh,
sense to you?
got it.
Yeah. So like for a generator, because you're a nice pure sacral generator, this is pretty quick, this system, right? However, you do have that split in your design, so it will take a little bit more time sometimes to process things because it's a slightly slower digestion. But essentially, your sacral jump is instant. Cool, that's a yes. That's an I'm in. You may not even know why. This is the magic of human design. I don't need my logical brain determining why, but I know that my body is saying yes, so I go. But if that energy is not jumping for something, why else might we make decisions? Because we've been conditioned to. Because we were told we should do this for our family, because we were told that we should do this to advance our career, because we were told that we had to work hard to get anywhere, for example. That's not true. I want you to work with joy. I don't want you to work hard. And if you enjoy it and you feel satisfied, great. And at the point where you start feeling frustrated, it's a request from your system to check in. Why am I frustrated? Is it I'm now working with someone I never wanted to work with? You know, maybe the staff at work change and now you've got to deal with someone and it's just frustrating all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is there a way to change that somehow to address that? Is there a new attitude that could be brought forward? Is there communication that could be brought forward? Or is it simply a matter of, okay, it's time to get out of that? If you jump into something because your family, for example, you know, I know you well enough to be able to comment to some of these things because your family says, oh, you should do that. And you go, well, you know, dad said I should. It's like, was this sacral jump? Was it rising up out of your gut going, boom, yes? Or was it kind of like, eh,
Okay.
you know, and you're going to hear it when you listen to this, and I am drawing it out of you a bit, but you're going to hear yourself sometimes make noises. Ah, ooh, you know, like these noises are the sacral speaking. And so just noticing in yourself when you're making those noises. Because what we also see here in this particular channel, your 3410, is that you have an unconscious 34 and a conscious 34. So you're going to get to become aware of that, you know, and then it's going into a conscious 10. You actually have that 34 three times. And that is three times, and it's all lessons for you to become aware of. And I am going to talk about those because I thought they were quite important. So this channel of exploration, this incredible energy bucket, like you are so energetic, like only people with this channel are going to keep up with you. And I've had the pleasure of coming across this channel many times, and I really enjoy it because it's just energy abounds. And from you, it's such, because you're a generator, it's such a consistent push, 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 push. And as a generator, you are going to want to get up in the morning, give yourself a good kickstart. Because of your open emotional center, I'm going to say a breathwork practice for you would be magical. Yeah. And usually I would say that to defined emotional centers, but because of your work and because of that open emotionality, I think a breathwork practice to clear it out in the morning and get it set up and get it going and kickstart that generator motor, but also in the evening to detox from all the people that you come into contact with at work. Because what's happening in that center is a perfect amplification of everybody else's emotions. And out there in that contrasting world, not self world, or contrasting world, there's a lot of people struggling in that center, and you are getting a lot of experience and a lot of stuff going through that center all day. And it's one of the reasons I feel you end up at the end of the day, like kind of feeling sticky and like, ugh. And there's no real frustration, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like you don't know why. So it is a frustration, but you don't know quite why you're like that. You're like, oh, I just don't feel good.
Yeah.
I feel with you, it's this emotional center amplifying everybody else's emotions perfectly. So you go like on this emotional roller coaster at work all day.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. And so we need to clear that out. And I feel breath work, maybe some sound work, because this channel, the 3410, is vibrational. It's going to like vibration. Sound work, drumming, making noise, stuff like that. I think that's going to be really good. And then taking a moment to sit. Um, this channel is a knowing, mutative, and melancholic channel. And it's important to note when you have melancholic circuitry, because the other thing that can happen is when you feel like things aren't mutating fast enough, because you're here for a mutative life, you're here to expand big time. Everybody's here to expand, but you're here to expand rapidly. And there are some things you just know, and it's this sacred response. This 34 just knows it's for your 10, It's like, I just know. I just know this is for me. How do you know? I don't know. I know.
Uh,
Do I need to explain this to you? I could give you a bunch of reasons, but I just know it's for me. Makes
yeah.
sense?
Yes. Got
And
it.
and that energy is going to keep pushing. If you ignore it, it's going to keep jumping away. Every time that passes you, it's going to respond to it. I want that. I want that. I want that. So I feel with this channel, it's got so much energy powering through it. If you can work with the detriments in the 34, which I am going to come to, you can potentially get to a point where you don't sleep. And you're already in a place where you don't sleep too much, right?
I used to sleep like only 4 to 5 hours, but from last few months, I'm just sleeping like at least 7.5 hours or 8 hours.
But you've been working nonstop, right?
Yeah, quite a
Yeah.
few weeks.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, that sustained pressure isn't ideal. And there are ways to manage that even at work, but I still think getting out of work is important. And I think in your job, having breaks is not so easy, right? There are natural breaks throughout the day, but you don't get to pick them. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So, and natural breaks from people. Sometimes it's dead quiet, sometimes it's very busy. Ideally, you would be able to sacral respond to, I need a break, because that's for me. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Um, and so petitioning for, oh, actually, we need two people on the floor so that you can take breaks, because that's actually a legal requirement in this country too, just as a side note. So, this is your 34. The 34 nod here is about, to me, it's about knowing your worth. You have the 34 in the line 3, the line 2, and the line 5, and they are all in detriment. Detriment doesn't mean you can't run them well, but to me, it speaks to shadow when I see something where everything's just going, yeah, this is not necessarily going to run correctly. Because that 34 wants to do stuff, because you've got so much energy, you can potentially fabricate jobs. You can make yourself busy with things that don't matter. Does that sound right?
oh yeah,
Yeah. And as a result of doing that, you're wasting your energy and you're not honoring the sacral response, right? And there's a tendency here even to kind of create self-importance by creating like a busyness or creating jobs. There's even a tendency here for you to want to get people to acknowledge that you did good, you know? And then there's that moodiness, right? And the moodiness is also, so all of these things, the tendency to fabricate jobs, the tendency to need people to kind of acknowledge your work or acknowledge you, and the tendency for you to get a bit moody, which I think has a potential connection to health a lot of the time for you as well, or not clearing out that emotional center. That is, those are things to watch out for. And what I would say to you, and I think there's part of me that realizes you know. And there's another part of me when I observe you, it's like where you devalue yourself. You have to know your worth. And you may not be able to define that with words, right? Especially since you're not always connecting to the throat with this area of your body. But you have to know your worth. Without generators, there's no point in the rest of us being here. Generators are these creative beings that come here to do work that's satisfying for them, that they want to do, that sacral is jumping for. And it's so important to understand that without your energy, we all have nothing to do, right? Like, or it all falls a bit flat in the case of the manifestors. And so we're all looking for what you have. And it's important to look after that. So your meditation should really be understanding that you may never be able to get a 3D concept of how much you're worth, but you can feel it. There might not be words for it, but you can sit in it and feel it hum through your body and understand your body is almost too small for it.
Okay.
But your body is your mechanism through moving through this world. So it's actually here to serve that energy. It's here to serve what you actually are, which is really beyond words and beyond conceptualization in that sense. But you can feel it.
Yes.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to say also about this 3410 is your energy is not really to be focused outwardly. It's to be focused inwardly. And this is a generator concept as well. A generator is really here to get enlightened through turning inwards. And you're a 1-3 profile. So if you look at the top of your chart, you see your sun is 61, line 1.
Yeah.
And the other side is the 62, 32, line 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. You see that 1 and that 3, those line numbers, that gives us your profile. That gives us this, in essence, this definition about you that is relatively unaffected by the outside world. It is something that you're most likely going to relate to. And a 1-3 is very much running out their own experiment in life. And that means what we do, that first line, which is something you're aware of, is you're a geek, right? You love a good deep dive into stuff. And you're constantly looking for stuff to kind of deep dive into. And you're going to follow that sacral response into that. And whatever you sacrally respond into researching, you're going to have so much energy for, and it's going to be really satisfying. And then you're going to want to experiment and test it out. So you're going to do this big deep dive, and then you're going to go out into the world and you're going to experiment with it. And you're going to get burned. And you're going to hit your head against a wall. And something's going to explode on you. And maybe you hurt your foot. And then you're going to go back and you're going to research again. And there is this constant process of doing the research and then experimenting with it to refine the research. And you've got this incredibly logical brain that does see patterns. So as you go through this process, you're going to start seeing patterns. And you're going to be able to explain the patterns to us. And you're going to be able to bring the patterns forth to our awareness. But also, there's this quality as this 1-3 that it's very turned in on itself. So you may even get called, like, selfish at times because you're very concerned about your self-discovery process. But 1-3s are actually building a foundation for everyone. It is a great refining, boundary pushing process that is establishing solid ground for everybody else to stand up on. So it isn't entirely selfish to be turned in on oneself when your job here is very much relating to that. In that first line with that geek, as I like to call it, that investigator, that deep diver that can get so totally absorbed in something they may not come up for a while, or it's all they listen to for the next 3 months because they're so absorbed in it. It also lacks confidence, And so the third line body it bounces, that's what you have, a third line body. It bounces down the street. It's got this energy to it, and especially in a generator, bouncy, bouncy, bouncy. So you can look really confident, but you know that that's not entirely true. There are definitely times when mentally, personality wise, you feel a little unaware, like not unaware, unstable or not on solid ground. And the first line is going to get questioned. So you do need to know your stuff. Oh, where did that come from? How do you know that?
Okay.
And of course, with this 3410, some things you just know. So that 1-3 it's like the ability to pivot. Things go wrong. We love to run an experiment, right? But there's that quality of like, oh, well, let's just test it out, and an ability to go, oh yeah, that went wrong, and just we were expecting things to go wrong, right? It's like running an experiment. It's an experiment, but sometimes we forget that our whole life is an experiment, and we do bring that message to others as well. Life is an experiment. Shit's going to go wrong, but how do you pivot? How quickly do you move in another direction? How quickly do you take that incredibly logical mind of yours and go, aha, what about this? Right? And
Yeah.
that's what a third line is so good at. Like nobody moves quicker than a third line. And a third line body is fast. It's waiting to pivot. It's waiting to parry, to dodge, to turn. And you're very lucky in that way because a third line body, that shit bounces. It doesn't carry the scars like a sixth line body does of its entire life that revisit at 50. Third line bodies, if anybody's going to get better from an accident, it's a third line body. From something going wrong, it's a third line body. Tried and tested. I've seen it multiple times. I know 60-year-old 1-3s who've got steel and bolts and all sorts of things going on, and they bounce when they walk into the room. They're super fit. They're very capable. They're moving in ways that if I brought in a sixth line body, they would be on a Zimmer frame. Third line bodies are wonderful. You should feel very lucky to have one. So I want to talk about some of your undefined centers here. So your spleen is undefined. You see that diamond on the left of the chart there?
Yes, 46, 18, like this.
The 48, the 18.
48, yeah.
48, the 18, and the 32. The spleen is an old survival center. And it's very intuitive. Now you have it undefined. So remember that's about playing in this energy. But it's also undefined with red gates. So remember I said those red or those pink gates, they're unconscious?
Yeah.
So there's a whole lot of stuff popping here you may not be aware of. And because the spleen is kind of driven by fear, it's very important for you to understand some of the potential shadows here. So when we are looking at, let's see where I put this. When we're looking at the gate 48, the well, this is like the well of knowledge. And so the 48 can often, there's so much wisdom in that 48. It's got great depth, right? But when that 48 flicks up with its not self or its contrast theme, you're going to see someone who's like afraid that they're not prepared, afraid that they don't know enough.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's familiar to you?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like if I wanted to start something new, I wanted to know something new before, like, okay, how can I do it? Like, little bit afraid, like, how can I do it? Our main thing is like, okay, the person who is helping me or whatever, how they feel it if I made something wrong.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Like, always scared. But once it's like a thing started, then I got a confidence.
Yeah.
And then that thing's going really well.
You see, that's also your 1-3 playing out, right? So
Yes.
your 1-3 is looking for that foundation. Once it gets started, it starts bumping into things and works out that it can pivot. That you actually are because that's in your unconscious, that ability to pivot, that incredible adeptness at pointing yourself in another direction and going, oh, like remember the light bulb came about from like thousands of iterations, including a few explosions. that's an incredible experimenter that eventually came up with a game changer for us. And that's what it is to be a third line. It's like, cool, explosions are fun, like that might be useful later. So I would say definitely that fear of jumping into something, even though there's that sacral push, yeah, that could be limiting for you. And that fear of knowing enough. Do I have enough information to go forward? Some things are beyond knowledge. That doesn't mean don't do the research. You're a first line. But what it means is sometimes some things are just known.
Okay.
When you're experimenting in 3D, sometimes it's not until you actually start the experiment that you're going to get the rest of the information. And that's what a 1-3 is about.
Yep.
We see the 18 there. This is pretty much a fear of not being good enough. It's got a perfectionistic quality to it, as does the 48. And so we see this I'm not enough theme coming through. And the 18 is really about perfecting form. There's an idea of perfecting form and mending mistakes of the past that's sort of coming in with the channel that it would connect into there. So there is, like, especially with that first line, there may be that tendency to turn on yourself and go, what's wrong with me? And it's part of this channel of judgment as well. So being aware that these are natural fears within your mechanism that might flick up at times, but they're mechanical, actually. And so you can observe them and move anyway. Go with your gut. That's your rule. If the energy is there and it goes, do I start now? And it goes, yes, you start now. So sometimes you may find yourself feeling like you're jumping in head first. And sometimes that's going to be correct for you if the energy is pushing. We also see 32 duration. And my mind has gone a little blank for some reason here. Go down to that. Little pause. Sorry. Sorry, total mind blank.
That's okay.
That's fine, because I definitely wrote this down just in case I needed it. So funny. I now can't find it because 32. Hang on, I'm just going to pause this. Jump not there. Sorry, I wrote this fucking shit down last night. Now I can't find it. I'm just like, oh, for fuck's sake. I'm just going to. So gate 32, gate of duration, the not self theme here, or the fear that you're going to see coming up is fear of failure. So if you think about that combined with the other ones, there's like, I don't know enough, I'm not sure that I'm good enough, and then fear of failure when you're a 1-3, right? So just being aware of those are little thoughts in your head to watch for. And, the way we get over our fears, we do it anyway. And because I always like to think of this as mechanical, because these are mechanics that you become familiar with. It's not like you get rid of them. I think there's a great lie within meditation kind of realms. Not that Buddhists tell you this, by the way, that you're going to like kill your ego and that you're going to get over stuff and you're not going to fear things anymore. It's like, what we're looking at here is this unique tool that helps you become familiar with yourself, because meditation is really an art of becoming familiar with. And as I become familiar with understanding these mechanics that are within my body, these are in the unconscious, right? So they're very much in the physical and very much playing out in the background, often without you realizing them, that so you can even question yourself. Am I afraid because I think I'm not good enough? You can bring it more into the foreground. But the more I become aware that this is part of my mechanism, the more I can observe it and do it anyway. Right? Because it's just mechanics. And that's something I really like about human design is sometimes I can just recognize my mechanics and then I can go, and I'm just going to step over that right now, you know? But there is also no rush. I don't have to do it today. I think one of the biggest fears that's just part of the programming of the world is that there's some rush, there's some timeline, there's some you need to do this by 30, you're going to die at whatever. Like people get so caught up in age and time. And these things, talk to someone with a channel of rhythms and they will tell you that timing it's in the ethos. It's something beyond what we understand, you know, and time doesn't really matter. You're here to have a great life. And if your timing is off on one day and correct the next, you know, that's learning. That's just a process of understanding how timing works. And it's not according to a watch, you know. So before
Is this
yes, ask
is,
question.
is this connect with the self-confidence as well? If you don't have enough self-confidence.
So so that first line, not having confidence, then all the fears start jumping around. And because you have this undefined spleen, there's a natural feeling when the spleen is defined that you feel safe. And so when you come near someone who has a defined spleen, they feel very safe. They can be the most unsafe person for you in the world sometimes. And because they have a defined spleen or you define spleens together, it feels really good to be around them. And it's like you can let go because that's a survival mechanism there, right? The spleen is like the snap of a twig. It's the whisper of the wind on the back of your neck, the hairs standing up on your arms. It's the ready to run. It's very much connected to fight or flight, right? So it's there to protect you. And the way yours works is it plays in that safety feeling, but you're no more or less safe than anyone else. Again, it's a mechanic. And I also have an undefined spleen, so I understand. But remember what I said before, all those red gates, they're also intuitive. It's intuition in the spleen. So there's an intuitive nature there about people's health and about people's fear. And it will be wisdom. It's going to be wisdom about overcoming all of these things as you develop and evolve and you get used to them. You're going to be like, oh, yeah, you just step over that one. You know, that's just natural. It's natural not always to feel like you've got this. It's a natural part of in your mechanism to not feel like you've got enough information, you know, and it's natural to want to avoid the mistakes, but it's a natural part of our process in life as humans and especially as third lines to make them in the first place and to refine and to continue refining a process and pushing a boundary, you know. No third lines, no breaking ground, no breaking new ground.
Yeah.
So keeping that in mind, with some of your other defined, undefined centers here, we talked about your root and we see gate 60 in the root coming up a couple of times. And this is all about, I quite like an undefined root because there is wisdom here about starting something from scratch, from very little, from limitation. There's also wisdom here about, you know, gate 38, the fighter. I'm going to fight for my freedom, actually. That's really what the 38 is about. I'm going to fight for my liberty. I'm going to fight for who I am. The 60 is limitations and it's doubled up. So it's really about how do I start something with these limitations? And then we have the 41 there as well. And so, you know, again, that's also got a message about it in the limitations as well. And so that root center really is about how do I start something with very little, you know. That 41 is imagination. It's such a cool gate. So it's about imagining what something could be when you take it from this and make it huge. You know, like the t-shirt business we were talking about, for example. You know, right now it's a bunch of t-shirts in a box. but that could be a massive online brand.
Oh
That's,
yeah.
imagine what that could be. That could be a series of different things. That could be caps and track pants and, boards for stepping on and all that sort of stuff. But your imagination's got to go there. But again, you're not designed to sustain pressure. So it's not about you creating something that's constantly improving. It's about you helping other people to constantly improve and then stepping back from it, when you have the undefined spleen and the undefined root, that splenic gallbladder center is going to need to be detoxed from everybody else's stuff. That root system needs to step out of the pressure that everybody else puts into things. It needs to detox. It needs to clear. Those adrenals are going to need support.
Okay.
When we move over to the emotional center and the heart center, and this is going to be really relevant given the conversation we had earlier today, the emotional center, I talked about that needing to be detoxed from everyone else's stuff. And my feeling is, because I run my system fairly well, you like to be around me because that emotional center is relatively well run. So it's like, oh, I just like some good emotional energy right now, And so it's getting that experience. And so in some ways, I think you're rebalancing sometimes with me. And that's the craving there as well. It's like, oh, Erin can fix it, And so learning to manage that yourself is important too, learning to clear that out so that it's a lovely thing to want to hang out around healthy emotional energy. It's got a real awareness to it as well, even if you're not quite sure why you're doing it. There is an awareness there. But it is also good to be able to manage your own system yourself, accepting the split definition, accepting that there are two parts of you thinking in two different ways or responding in two different ways to the world. That open emotional center means that people will often see you as being dramatic, because they're seeing themselves amplified. So you get around emotional people and you may be the one who gets accused of that.
Yeah, it happens like when you listen 2 to 3 different people. When you listen 2 to 3 different people,
yeah,
and just wanted to do whatever you want, whatever you feel like. At that time, like for example, if I go with your decision, other 2 people is gonna think, okay, why?
feel
If you
bad.
want to do
Yeah.
at that time, like my system is like, okay, oh, they feel not good, so I made something wrong and something like weird thinking going on, how they feel like about me and blah 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 blah. It happens with me.
Yeah. I'd be very careful there too, that because someone emotionally isn't happy or feeling good around you, that's not on you. And, one of the things that I think is worth being careful of is that tendency to serve everyone before yourself outside of your sacral response. The way you're meant to pick people is sacrally,
Oh,
is
yeah.
you, and it may be in the day that they are your good friend, but sacrally there's like a nah. It's like, it's silent, or it's even sort of like shying away. It's like shrinking inside you. It's like when you feel that, it's like, and not today, thank you. Remember, bonds made and broken. And so maybe today someone invites you to something and you go, no, thank you. It's a responding system being a generator. You are here to respond. You're not here to initiate anything. So pretty girl walks past you and your sacral responds, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, even better, pretty girl says hello to you and your sacral responds, and then you want to inquire further, you know. Same with jobs and invitations and stuff like that. It's like you see a job advert and your sacral jumps at it, and you're like, that's for me, that's mine, like, because I can feel my sacral going for it. It may not even be for you. It may be that by responding to that thing, it takes you down a pathway, or it opens up an energy that you don't even understand, and things start unfolding for you. And you start getting more and more things just landing in your lap for you to respond to. But just because you get invited to something doesn't mean you have to go. Even if it's your best friend's birthday, you know, if If it's a no, it's a no. And it's so nice to have a pure sacral response as a generator because it's simple. If you can get that right, should I eat this food? Sacral says no, you know,
Yes.
sacral doesn't jump for it. Sacral's not jumping for joy. And you can ask it, ask your body this and put your hand on it. Like, is this for me? Not for me. Is this for me? Yeah, that's for me.
Yes.
Should I take vitamins? Yes. Like, should I take this vitamin? No. Oh no, sacral's not jumping at that today. I mean, you really can run even your health along those lines. I've had the jump for alcohol before. Well, not the jump. I've had the feeling. For me, it's different. But I've had the feeling where it's like, I feel like a glass of alcohol of the right kind is actually going to help with my system. And it has. And I measure everything. So it really can be surprising, given someone who doesn't really drink, that your vehicle can guide you to something that may be outside of your logic, maybe outside of all of your rules. And it can guide you away from something that may be inside all of your rules, and required by all of your laws. And you're not a tribal person, you're individual and collective. Really, I see this as you can collectively share all these patterns and ideas with the world. And so you can speak to the world, but you're really here for your journey. You're really an individual, So the other thing that needs to be cleared out is that willpower center. You're not here to prove anything, by the way. And so, like, let go of proving yourself is probably something I'd say. What you're here to do is sacrally respond to stuff that you really want to do and go have some fun doing it. And to get to feel satisfied at the end of every day, and exhausted. We want to exhaust that sacral energy as much as we can on shit you really like doing, But that heart center can also be cardiovascular health and bloodstream. So, you're really drawn to cycling and stuff like that. I think that is good, and walking uphill and nose breathing and some good breath work exercises, I think, like holotropic, or Kundalini, where we really get the breath work going. But also looking after the bloodstream. So things like spirulina, dark leafy greens, like in abundance. That really needs to be helped there as well, because that heart center, that willpower center, that little tiny triangle is sitting out there really amplifying everybody else's wants and needs. And so you may find yourself playing in, oh, maybe I want this, or maybe I want that,
Yep.
It won't be any of my wants and needs per se, just FYI, because I don't have that center with you either. So we have that undefined together. But you may find really feeling pushed by somebody else's desires at times, and going along with it. So developing boundaries for you is a big deal in this life,
Okay.
And that comes back to sacral response. I really want you to do this. That's nice. Sacral says no.
Yep.
Yeah. I had some notes. So I want to just have a look at the nature of how this all sort of all comes together, and also this balance of your two channels that you have, this like going out and exploring and like spending a lot of time in life just adventuring versus this ability to see patterns. There's an element in this seeing patterns where you're collecting opinions of others through sacral response, and then you're adapting that within your centering circuit, this 3410. So,
Yes.
like I said to you before, you're going to hear the opinions of others And you're really here to listen to those and then like look at it through that right eye and go, does that make sense? Right? Does your opinion make sense? And your ability to pull apart an argument's top level, you know? You really could make someone wrong even when they're right. So be aware of arguing for the sake of arguing. But even an opinion that makes sense to you, I still would say feel it out through sacred response. Is this for you? You know? If your response is not jumping at that opinion and you find yourself stuck in some sort of mind loop of trying to justify the opinion because it makes sense to you, makes mental sense to you, but the sacral is not giving you that nod, honestly, I would breathe out and move on. Some opinions are just not for you, no matter how much you want to make a person right. And there are lots of reasons we are conditioned within our charts, particularly in the mind, whether it's defined or undefined, that we can try to justify something as correct for us when really, once we've run it through our whole system, it's just a no. And learn to listen to that no. You know, checking to make sure that how you are living is, in a sense, your own living style. It's not what everybody else says. It's not the coulda, woulda, shouldas of society. It's about what your sacral says is good for you and you feeling satisfied. And when you get that not self or contrast theme of frustration coming back in, you know, and going, oh, well, hang on a minute, you know,
Yep.
hang on a minute, what could I change here? And that programming from society, including that I should do this because this is what I do for friends, because I always put friends first, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. It's like I only do for friends what I feel is correct to do, because there is stuff that you don't understand within the energetics of things that your body will tell you about. And you may not logically get it, but your body will be like, there's a reason you're not meant to put your foot there. There's a reason your energy, for some reason, is not required here. Because everything is perfectly running. And sometimes other people are meant to step into a role you might fill out of a sense of obligation, when in actual fact, it's not your place. And the only way you know that is by learning to run that sacral response really well.
Okay.
You know? And people may be begging you for help, and it's like, yep, but it's not for me. I'm sorry. I'm sure there is going to be someone who's going to help you with that. You know?
Yep.
So don't just set yourself aside all the time, you know? So you come into this life as a generator to respond sacrally as a 1-3 to help build foundations with an incredibly sharp mind that recognizes patterns, with the sacral response of exploration and, you know, coming into self, that 34 into the 10. And then we have this quality here of, or this life theme of Maya. You know what the Maya is?
Ooh. No.
Maya is about, it means illusion. It's something that we relate to in Sanskrit, actually. And it's about how this whole world is kind of an illusion to us. So you see a whole lot of
Is
things. What's that?
sorry to stop, like interrupt here. Is
Yeah.
this the thing, like if you are doing something and like, okay, I did something in this past, like this? Is this the one? Like if you are doing some work or if you're doing some activity and if you feel like, okay, I did before as well, something like that, illusions? No.
I don't think so. I'm struggling. Let me explain it a bit more and see if that answers the question.
Okay. Yeah.
So the life theme of Maya is really about learning how to describe everything in your world. And you may have more than one way of describing things. And I've actually even heard you do that, where you go to redescribe it. It's completely new reiteration, like iteration on the description.
Okay.
Right? So, but you're really observing the Maya. You're observing all of this out here, and then you're describing it back. And so think about that with that life theme of, with that channel of patterns that you have there. It's like your ability to recognize the patterns as they play out in the world that we live in. So we are fifth dimensional beings living in a three-dimensional illusion. And that's the Maya. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Even this body that I'm in, it's not mine. I borrowed it. Make sense?
Yeah.
And I get to run in this avatar, which we're looking at in depth today in this design system. And this avatar has a way of moving in the Maya because it's designed for it. But I'm a fifth dimensional being, so I needed an avatar. Does that
Okay.
make
Yeah.
sense? Yeah. And so as you're sitting in this avatar, you're looking at all this illusion and you have this way of describing what is going on. You also have this way of seeing the patterns. Yeah. And so you're constantly observing the processes of growth and change and relating them to the underlying principles at work in the universe. Because with that knowing circuitry that you have in the 3410, there is also something that just knows as well. And as human beings, there is something in us that is plugged into the knowledge of the universe as well. So combine that with that patterns thing again. Like, it's so clever how it comes together. Your meditation in this life is not everything is as it appears. And I think that relates back also to, like, someone may make something sound really, really logical. You may even be able to make something sound really logical, but that doesn't mean it is what it is.
Okay.
Right? It's just an explanation. And it may not be for you. And sometimes things are more than one thing as well. Right? So it's always worth really taking that step back in this life theme to really observe and to try to remove yourself and your own wrapped upness in the world, to be really able to just observe the illusion playing out its patterns, essentially. Keeping in mind that part of your observation is going to be watching all the patterns shifting into new versions of themselves. How much has religion changed? How much has political beliefs changed? How much has the structure of our society changed? Once upon a time, women were owned. You know, even recently, women were still owned in some countries and they're throwing off their hijab. Look at the changing, look at the rhythm, look at the cycle. There are rules to it, there are patterns. But there are things that are ever changing. The rules that we often enforce in our world, most of them are temporary. An attempt at finding safety, perhaps, an attempt at trying to get people to conform. Human design is not about conforming. It is about radically living in your mechanism so that you can really see something magical happen in your life. And as you do that, as you align to your own frequency within your body, you are going to see that life starts falling into place. And you're going to be able to witness the Maya even better. And it's going to be funny. You know, for a third line, a sense of humor is needed. For someone with the life theme of Maya, boy, is a sense of humor needed. And there is no such thing as objectivity. That's why things are not always as they appear, because you're always bringing your subjective nature, the way you receive through this body, into things. So it's really important to remember that you're trying to step back, but there is always a subjective quality to how we view anything from the bodies that we're in. You have an openness to shifting perspectives, and it gives you an attunement to this life and to our place in it, and understanding what human beings are actually doing here within this illusion. You know, as you seek the truth and you stay determined to your quest, because that's also what you're doing. You're in this gate, Sun Gate 61 in this as well. But as you're seeking the truth, and that's kind of what you're doing in Maya, you know, in the theme of Maya, you're looking for the truth as to why we're all here. Remembering that there's a subjective quality coming forward, and that you're going to need to laugh as you go through the process. And that you're going to have to take that step back on a personal level. You know, life does not have to be too serious. And that's going to help you get a perspective on everything. It's very easy to get bogged down in 6 million people being gassed in gas chambers, what's going on in different world wars. And it's actually all pretty silly what we're doing to each other. And in a way, the behavior is amusing, even though the situations are not, you know, and how life plays out, you know. Parents have unconditional love as long as their children behave well. You know, that's funny. And then they're not so loving of their children. Like there's a lot of stuff here that's amusing. And eventually we all die and we all get so caught up in death. But death is really just a changing of rooms. Beginnings and ends are part of the 3D illusion. Everything is continuous.
I read the few things about the avatar, this is just a body changing after we die, our atma, we call atma, just like changing just the body. I read this one in Mahabharata.
Exactly.
That's a whole thing written in the, we call Bhagavad Gita.
Yes.
As per Indian culture. Yeah, and I read those things. I'm still reading halfway through.
Beautiful. Bhagavad Gita is an interesting read, and so how many times it's been used in different elements. And again, it becomes an attempt at describing the Maya and how we are behaving within it. So it's a fascinating book, but there are so many fascinating books that have attempted to do the same thing. The sad thing about words is that they are part of the 3D, and so they are limited. And so even what's happening now is I give you all of these words and gratefully a recording later on so you can replay it. Words are limited by our intellectual ability to create them in the first place, which, I mean, you have the channel that is very much about language. That logical channel is what helped bring language into our world. But there are some things I just can't put words to.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting truth. So in this world where you are here to describe everything to people and to describe everything to everyone through sacred response, right? Correct people in that way, or potentially even stand on a stage one day or write a book, you know. And you're doing this by observing how we're growing, how things are changing, what the patterns are for our evolution. And in that, there are underlying principles, what I would call underlying truths to the way our world is functioning.
Yep.
And with your sun gate and inner truth, which, by the way, is a gate that's going to disappear from the celestial background in 2027.
Then what's going to be happen? If it's a disappear, then
that's another story. That's
going to be effect on my real life.
It will affect us all, actually.
Okay.
The gate of inner truth, which is your sun gate, which you remember I told you is in that top triangle.
Yeah.
And that top triangle for you, it's like you're in a dark room with that sun gate. Like, hang on, what am I doing here? And then when you start interacting with people, which your job allows you to do all day, which is kind of great, it lights up for you. And you're a seeker, you know, you're a natural seeker. So you're naturally here looking for inner truth, you know. And it's an intensity to know what makes the universe go round because it relates to us so deeply.
Got it.
You know, and you may find yourself pushing yourself into unconventional circumstances to find out. And given where you and I met, I can say that's definitely true. And even your approach in that realm is unconventional. So, well, let's just try everything, you know? Let's check it all out. Let's see what's under the hood of this one. What's in this tin can? What's in this box? You know?
Just wanted to try each and everything and getting experience.
Because you're wanting to work out how the machine works. And it is, in a sense, a machine. that's why human design will be something probably that actually really does appeal to you. You know, you're going to happen upon some really startling insights that if had you not put yourself in some really rare circumstances, you would never have understood. You know, you're a very intelligent guy working in a job that really doesn't challenge your intelligence, to be honest. But it gives you an experience of something that's super interesting, you know, and you're getting to come into contact with a lot of different people through it. So it is actually probably very satisfying for your life theme.
Okay.
There is a potential here for you to open new realms of possibility in your brain on a constant basis. That through your exploration and your deep dive and your attempt to explain these things and the ability to see all these patterns, that you're going to see new portals to go through, new opportunities. Because as you see the pattern, it's like the whole design opens up to you. And when I say design, I mean the Maya, the world, the illusion. Your mind attunes to what you perceive as truth, but you come to realize that while your mind can get close, you cannot actually reach the truth. That everything has this subjectivity through the vehicle, through this avatar, and it is limited by the language, as I said before. When you try too hard in your quest, the truth will seem further away. You are going to have to learn to relax and let your type, generator, and authority, sacral, guide you so that existence can reveal the truth to you. Because actually, the truth really is so much closer than you think.
Okay. That's interesting.
It's cool, actually. And to me, as someone who is constantly kind of receiving stuff, to me, there's nothing truer than this. That when you relax and let go, you can feel it. You may, in your case, you may be able to put words to that. In my case, also, but that's a process as well. And some things, it's worth relaxing sometimes and not trying to put words to it, not trying to explain it just yet. You know, let it be there and let
Yeah.
yourself go through the process of experiencing it before you worry too much about sharing it with others, even though there's a huge driver in you to share with others. You know, you are here to express your opinions very much.
Yeah.
So, brief little summary there for you. We went over your channels and how everything works. You are a generator. A generator is a responding unit. It is waiting, dramatically waiting at times for that sacral jump and finding the words to say no when that sacral is not jumping, or to say, hey, this worked for me and this was great, but I really need out, you know. That your authority is sacral. It's not emotional. It doesn't need time. It's quick. It jumps fast. And then it starts getting frustrated when it doesn't like where it is or who it's with. And this relates to everything in life, whether it's people or things or food or exercise. Use your sacral every time. You can even potentially set it up as yes, no questions for yourself, you know, or have someone ask you the questions. And that's why projectors come to ask questions to guide generators, so you can hear yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have this beautiful sun gate, the 61 and the line 1, you know, and actually going to flip to that for you and just read it. This gate of inner truth. And 61 line 1 reads, having perception, quietly allowing your psychic attunement, you have the means to probe deeply into some of the inner workings of life. And that leads into this idea of your life theme, which should, if you run yourself sacrally perfectly, should just start happening for you, where you come forward to describe what you see happening in life, the cycles and the patterns.
Yep.
But without any pressure. And then finally, looking at this from the perspective of, at the moment, we do have health stuff to work with. But ultimately, once we get some of that in line, there is still going to be a need to clear out the spleen and the gallbladder regularly, which means watching oils and fats, and then also doing detoxes, adrenal support and cleanse, emotional cleanse every day, please. And even setting yourself up well with that. And then blood strengthening and purifying, and that's done cyclically. So that's other stuff to think about. Do
Yeah.
you have any questions?
So questions. I just have a questions. Like as you explain about like 48 gate 32 and like
Mhm.
18 one, like it's like a fear and the things one, fear.
I
It,
described them in their fears because I wanted to bring attention to the shadows, but there are beauties to those gates too.
okay.
Yeah,
But my question is like, is there any ways to improve those gates or?
of course. But the first one is as someone who has a similar spleen, the first one is understanding what the fears are and recognizing them when they're jumping in the background, you know.
Uh,
And because they're very much in your body, it may take a bit more. So sometimes re-listening or learning more about those gates. And in the next one, I'm going to go over all of the lines for you. So we're going to go more in depth about like what gates and what lines you're running through your entire chart. So you're going to get to see what the exalted, beautiful side of all of those line numbers are and how you're bringing them as wisdom in the spleen and in the root, for example, and in the crown, but in the ajna and in the throat, self, sacral, where you're defined how you are using them for you, as opposed to bringing them as influence to others or how you're using other people's energy,
okay.
other people's centers. Some of them are energy, some of them are centers, you know.
Hmm.
Any other questions? And
Um,
did I answer that one enough?
yes,
And any other questions?
not for a moment.
Don't worry, I'll allow you some time at the start of the next one to ask questions,
Oh yeah.
which I won't record for these guys. So awesome. Very cool. I will send you a copy of this. And thank you so much for letting me read for you. It's actually a really lovely thing to get to see. Like you see how the chart actually comes together and forms a whole picture of it's such a beautiful thing to get to see.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm gonna hit end and say thank you very much to the gang who's also listening in the background.